Thank you very much for the very extensive introduction. I feel now very important, but let's also focus on this session, where I am very honored, pleased, and humbled with the audience, since normally I go to events where there are people like me. We are lobbyists and we pretend we know what we're talking about, but here I'm sitting with people who actually do know what the importance is of building efficiency, sustainability, and healthy environments. And it's especially your presence that makes this event and the organization of what ASHRAE has set up here so important. And also due to the fact that with that we can actually achieve the sustainability and the decarbonization that in Europe we are striving for. And your role in it is indispensable. So first we will actually then focus, why do we have the new building requirements in Europe, and what are the rules that in the European Union we have agreed upon, after which we will tackle the issues that are arising from it, because there are a few problems that have come up from it. Not with the rules themselves, but with how we would like to implement them in Europe. After which, your role, and I will then issue a call for your future awareness, participation, and speaking up as well, to ensure that those building rules that we have in Europe are also applied coherently and in a way that makes sense. Those building rules that we have in Europe, they do not fall from thin air. They are here for a reason, and that's because we want to decarbonize. We have targets we agreed upon in Europe. We have a decarbonization target by 2030 to a 55% less emissions than compared to 1990. And buildings, they play a key role in it, since 3/4 of them have a poor energy performance, and they also use the bulk of our energy demands. They are responsible for about half of all the gas that we are using in Europe for HVAC. That creates immense greenhouse gas emissions and also leads to Europeans living in unhealthy environments. So a quarter lives in that indoor environment, but also around 45 million Europeans, so 1 in 10, isn't able to heat or cool their homes properly, because we are having such low-performing buildings. And that has disastrous consequences. It means that we don't use up the potential in energy savings that we have, because stale, badly moved air and badly ventilated air is more difficult to heat in winter or to cool in summer. But it also leads to us feeling a little bit more drowsy. We don't get the air that we're actually needing, leading to productivity losses. And that's a sizable sum of money in Europe. And at times that we are trying to push our economies, it's not something that we can leave out. Most critical is actually that it leads to lots of health issues and also to loss of life. This means that in the EPBD, so the new Energy Performance of Buildings Directive in Europe, they're trying to tackle those issues by introducing renovation passports that track how buildings are being changed and move forward. There is also a big issue and focus on renovation, since 80% of the buildings that we will have in 30 years are already built. So it's not a new build, but it's a renovation where we can get the most effect of upgrading and better indoor environments. That means that national building and renovation plans need to be rolled out. Some of our colleagues presented a bit earlier today on what's happening. Unfortunately, most of member states have not yet presented them, since they have until May 2026 to come up with their proposals. And in Greece, the CANAC is also not yet updated to reflect these changes. This also means that there is an opportunity for you, but I will come back later during that presentation. We will have mandatory smart readiness indicators that track to what degree a building is ready for the most advanced energy efficiency, but also demand-side flexibility technologies that can interact with the smart grid, and also to what extent they have the indoor air quality potential that is needed for our current lives. And mandatory will be the environmental product declarations, which for HVAC will mean an assessment what the carbon footprint is of the product's production and also end of life and recycling. So all is very focused on sustainability and energy efficiency. But it's not just that. For the very first time ever, in Europe, we will have requirements on indoor environmental quality, on indoor air quality. So, including Greece, we will have to adopt requirements for how the air inside has to be, so that when we go to schools, our pupils and students can pay attention properly and learn quicker, that when we go to hospitals, we breathe in healthy air and the diseases do not spread. And when we go to work, we can remain focused. But that does not mean that we now will have healthy buildings. There are several pitfalls and several issues that we need to overcome. And the main issue that we need to overcome is market fragmentation. And that's really a self-imposed limit on ourselves that reduces the potential that we can reach to. So in Europe, we have, softly speaking, a problem. And that problem is that while we agree on European objectives and European targets, we all think that we are special. We all think that, yes, we agree on that, but for me, myself, I want to have something different, extra on the side. And that leads to a lot of confusion. It leads to also involuntary non-compliance, since lots of companies and also consultants or owners, they lose track of what's mandatory or not. And it also leads to headaches for suppliers, for customers, leading to not utilize market uptake that we could have had. And forget about tariffs. Lots of media attention about the US tariffs on European products, but it's exactly that internal market fragmentation, the differences in rules, the difference in requirements, the differences in interpretation, that leads to much higher costs that we have in Europe than any external tariff that can be imposed on us. And the EPBD isn't really helping. Since, yes, we have agreed on European rules, but there are like framework rules that need to be implemented, adopted by each member state and sometimes region in their own local requirements. And they have full freedom in doing that. They can decide for themselves what they want to do and how they want to introduce it to reach certain objectives. For IEQ, for example, we have a definition that it means there needs to be an assessment of conditions that influence the well-being of occupants. But what does that even mean? And influence how, with which parameters are we going to assess this? And that's very vague. In our member states, they are not really great at that. Well, they're actually very great at that in the sense that they will do whatever they want. And this is tricky because for HVAC, that means that a lot of confusion and fragmentation will occur. So while we will have excellent IEQ standards on paper, in practice, it means that there will be non-focus. Many member states will decide to do the bare minimum, whereas others they will become a little bit more ambitious, but it will not help. And that confusion and that fragmentation will lead that in practice much less will be achieved than that we can do. And the same for the environmental objectives that we have. There is a missing level playing field. And while life cycle assessments and environmental product declarations are excellent tools in achieving true sustainability and also truly being able to track and help and foster recycling, repairability, or reuse of products, it's also an immense task for consultants, for building owners, for suppliers, for customers, to follow up on those and follow up on that potential, especially when there are so many different rules available. So this also means that for one product, for example, ventilation, we will have more than 27 different environmental product declarations, which is extremely costly, extremely time-consuming, and in the end it means that we will fragment the market by several producers focusing on specific areas in Europe, which cannot be in line with what we discussed earlier. It cannot be in line with wanting to generate a single market where we also create jobs, sustainability, and more opportunities for us. This does not mean that the situation is hopeless. There is a lot of hope, actually, and the keys, they lay in your hands, amongst others. So how can we then optimize and ensure that we still move towards more sustainability and a better indoor environmental quality, even though our governments and politicians may decide to do their own thing? And that's by utilizing what's already available on the market. And when it comes to the implementation of building requirements in Europe, we have the Passive House Institute, which is widely acknowledged and has stringent criteria and requirements, and is also following and integrated within the EPBD requirements. So for a passive house building, having an HVAC unit with a passive house certificate would make sense. Of course, having a product's passive house certificate outside of the context of a passive house building becomes a little bit trickier, and then Eurovent offers an excellent solution that you can be ensured that you have a product that really contributes to the actual performance of a building, especially due to the reliability and the reassessments and the strict criteria that it has. Not only with the EPBD, by the way, but also with all other European product requirements, such as eco-design and energy labeling. And when it comes to indoor air quality, well, we just said member states can do what they want. Yes, but we can also convince them and try to push them towards a harmonized approach. So Eurovent has a recommendation, a very simple one, purely based on CO2 metrics and the airflow per person, that could quickly be adopted and also be understood by a large part of the market. Now, the EU guidelines, they also propose different metrics as well, for which REVA has issued also its own guideline on how to apply them clearly, so that at least when we will go beyond CO2, we will also have a very harmonized way of applying to material. And when it comes to EPDs, Hellenic is working on standards, and the main challenge is that we have only 2 years to finalize that standard. But once it's there, we can also ensure that the EPDs that we have are valid across Europe. The challenge or the task for you there is also to ensure that the national committees that we have in all the member states actually agree with it. And that we don't go in every member state develop our own EPD schemes, since that would create the whole issue that it's problematic. So together we can actually make IAQ and sustainability a reality by following the tools and the guidelines that are already available on the market. It's also, you have the power in your hands as well to recommend and push and promote the Eurovent and the EVA tools, whether it comes for the product certifications or for the application of IEQ, and also to push and help our the efforts that the sector has when it comes to the EPDs. And do you have any questions or comments?
Thank you very much for this informative speech, Mr. Flikweert.